Morning all. I'd like to show you another very interesting game from the Bled Zagreb Belgrade Candidates Tournament of 1959, which was one of the strongest tournaments Fischer had played in when he was 16 years old. So in this game he was white against Paul Keres. Paul Keres was an Estonian chess grandmaster, born 1916 and died 1975. He was a renowned chess writer, and he was among the world's top players from the mid-1930s to the mid-1960s. He narrowly missed a chance at a World Championship match on 5 occasions. He won the 1938 Avro tournament. That was the last significant tournament before World War II. That tournament victory led to negotiations for a title match against the champion Alexander Alekhine, but the match never took place due to World War II. After the war, Keres was runner-up in the Candidates Tournament on 4 consecutive occasions. Due to these and other strong results, many chess historians consider Keres the strongest player never to become world champion. He was nicknamed Paul II, the Eternal Second, and the Crown Prince of Chess. He was the only player in chess history to defeat 9 undisputed world champions. Now, this game is not featured in Fischer's memorable games. It is, however, a very dramatic game indeed. Fischer played e4, and many of the Russians were ganging up basically on Fischer's opening repertoire against his Najdorf when playing white, and playing black they were switching to the Caro-Kann defence, and Keres adopted the Caro-Kann because Fischer was playing this variation. He kept on playing this variation, the 2 knights variation, knight f3 here. And the plan now for black is bishop g4 to try and play for a dark square strategy, or cramping as well, space advantage if black can get in d4, because white's not playing d4 in these positions. And this is a little bit provocative for d4. Often, white will get onto light squares if black's tempted to play d4, but it sometimes doesn't happen. Black can just end up with a serious space advantage. Here we see h3, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and the move knight f6. Fischer now plays d3, and after e6, g3, it's a bit like a King's Indian attack, you could say, with the bishop pair, but the black knights and black's dark square strategy is now pronounced with this move bishop b4, because it immediately interferes with white playing the routine bishop g2. This d4 is a serious threat. And we have here white's bishop pair basically disappearing because of this key threat d4. White plays bishop d2 and we see d4. Now knight b1, and Petrosian had the fantastic 4 queens game we've seen on this channel. He was playing bishop takes d2 for the fantastic 4 queens game, and he also had another victory in this very variation with bishop d2, which was a bit of a grind, relentlessly expanding on the queen side later after the castling queen side. But here Paul Keres innovates slightly to Tigran by playing the move queen b6, and in my live book this is actually the far more popular move, queen b6, in this position, and it leaves black basically, it seems, with a significant small advantage, which is often unheard of. But black is doing very, very well in this position. One of the problems, the development that's interfered with, this knight has no natural place on d2. White really doesn't want to sacrifice b2, and in fact Fischer's concerned about b2 here. If he plays the routine bishop g2, black could go pawn hunting, just taking this pawn here, queen d1. Black's doing fine, there's no real gambit compensation here, and in fact after knight c4 could even throw in this check. Okay, so we see this move which is very, very passive, b3, and if we look at this knight really is having a hard time in this position, not able to come out to c3, so this is a significant spatial advantage. And now Paul plays another very strong move actually, a5, not only introducing the idea of a4 which would extend the scope of the rook. But a4, a takes is also weakening d3 if white's having to capture like this. d3 could be a target later for a knight coming to c5 or e5. Especially if the bishop's over here on g2, d3 could be a significant weakness. But the general activity of the rook is also to be factored in. So white is again playing a passive move here against this a4. He plays a3. And black is really not obliged to exchange off even the dark square bishops here. There's another thing about this position now, after bishop e7, that this wasn't a particularly useful or friendly move for this poor knight on b1. White is clogged up. This knight is a really miserable piece here. So this cannot be a very good opening position for Fischer to experience. He plays bishop g2, and now a terrible move to have to face a4, because if b takes, there's even queen b2. It's really embarrassing this rook. I think let's just absolutely check some variations here. If takes, this is actually a menace, queen b2. There's no way of defending the rook. So white is having to play b4, which he really doesn't want to play, ideally, because it's providing another biting point for c5 later. We see black playing knight bd7, not only introducing support for c5, but also knight e5 could be a pain. White castles for the moment, and black doesn't castle here, he just plays c5. So a lot of pressure on b4, and a very, very awkward move to have to play in this position. Very miserable, showing that things have gone wrong. Rook a2. It's a bit of a negative move. Engines is actually suggesting a much more aggressive move here. e5 as a viable alternative, actually. Knight takes e5, well, at least a certain depth. Queen takes, the idea of taking here. This might have been something to consider. Let's put the bishop back. C takes, A takes, and white might be okay. But we see this very miserable move Fischer's playing, rook a2. It just doesn't look right. This knight's kind of stranded, not getting natural development. Pressure on b4. Black now castles. And okay, this c takes b4 is really becoming a potentially dangerous threat. If black had tried to take the pawn in this position instead of castling, I don't believe this is possible because of things like rook b2 in this position, and white's doing fine. But it's still something to be concerned about in principle. And after castling here, we see Fischer actually playing, instead of queen e2, which would get out of the way of the f pawn, he actually plays b takes c5. So we see bishop takes c5, and again this knight is such a miserable piece on b1. Queen e2 now, so trying to play the traditional kind of King's Indian attack formation, trying to extend the scope of this bishop. But this bishop is locked in, as many other Russian players in the tournament have played against this bishop. e5, just simply locking in the bishop. Okay, white plays f4. And there's absolutely no need to take here and fall into white's play to expand this bishop. Black just plays rook fc8, and this provides a big question mark now for this c2 pawn sitting as a sitting target on this semi-open file. Black can actually try and pile up on c2 with rook c6 and queen c7. Once the bishop moves, c2's a problem. And we see this now. White plays h4, maybe so trying to introduce resources like bishop h3. We see rook c6. Very, very comfortable position. It's not really just the knight. This rook is also really not ideally placed. This must be, in fact, one of the more miserable positions Fischer's had when he was 16 or older in serious games. It just looks absolutely miserable. He plays bishop h3, okay, at least giving the bishop some scope, but queen c7, and we've now got the threat bishop d6 and this c2 pawn. This next move does not look very appealing at all in principle. F takes e5 is played, giving black a very nice looking knight. Knight takes e5. Okay, the knight is pinned for a moment, then now it's unpinned. And for the moment, okay, between the queen and rook, they are supporting the c2 pawn. But black actually has some positional threats here, like h5 and then knight g6. This could be quite unpleasant. h5 would fix white completely down, so no g4s. And knight g6 would put a lot of pressure on the dark squares. So it seems that Fischer's next move looks a bit strange, but it does seem to be quite a miserable position in any case. And this might make it worse though. Perhaps best, a lesser evil move here could be bishop g5, but and we could see knight ed7, and g3 is just such a pain. It might be necessary as a lesser evil approach just to try and sacrifice this pawn and try and generate some counterplay, but it's not very convincing at all, losing g3 like this. Perhaps this g file, optimistically, could be a source of counterplay, but no, Fischer actually doesn't go in for that. He plays in this position h5, and in conjunction with this bishop f4 there's a slight problem that rook a5 was on the cards after this bishop moved to f4, and now there's a target on h5. Black plays now rook a5, so this rook's coming in very dangerously, immediately threatening very horrible things like knight ed7. Just that h5 is loose here, and the rook can try and swing in for an attack even against the white king potentially. So this is getting very precarious situation indeed. And in fact, even a move like in this position, because of rook a5 and the queen is the only supporting piece of h5, if we imagine a move like rook b2, this could fall into knight takes h5, and if queen takes, then knight takes d3, double attacking the rook and the queen. Although white might have resources here, but in principle this is getting quite a loose pawn in this position, and Fischer now kind of just moves it forward again, which gives black unfortunately that lovely g6 square for the knight, which is made use of immediately. So huge pressure is being put on white on all the dark squares now, and this rook is ready to swing as well to h5 or even c5, just trebling on c2. This c2 pawn remains the lemon on the queen side, and there's weaknesses on the king side. So structurally this knight still really doesn't want to move without losing c2. This rook seems absolutely miserable on a2. Black's coordination is absolutely excellent, not just the knights with fantastic coordination, but the rooks and queens with perfect coordination against c2. Perfect battery here on the dark squares as well. It's truly positional disaster, this position we have right here, in so many respects. Bad pieces, bad structure, weaknesses, and this bishop's not really doing anything on this diagonal. It doesn't really console white to have the bishop pair here. So white plays queen f3, and from an engine point of view, even though materially it doesn't look as though it's materially up, the engines are suggesting this is at least +4 or more, 4.5 to black here. It's as if almost 5 pawns down. So rook h5, very powerful move now. What can white do here? If he humbly moves the bishop to g2, and see, bishop takes f4, and then rook takes h6, and there's very nasty threats here, like knight h4, knight h5. So this is a horrendous position after rook h5. Fischer tries here actually the move bishop g4, and now knight takes f4 is played, and you might think, well, maybe the lesser evil move must be surely to take on f4. It's just as bad as bishop takes h5 here. If g takes f4, knight takes, queen takes, rook takes. Black is now threatening immediately rook g6, just winning the queen. And this is such an unpleasant position. If this occurred on the board, what can white actually do here? He can't really even try and escape with his king. There's always c2 on the cards. For example, king f2, rook takes c2, crashing on the queen side. This would be extremely terrible position to have. So it's an absolutely terrible position here if g takes, and Fischer decides actually to play bishop takes, which of course allows knight 4 takes h5, winning 2 bits, two bits for the rook, and still with enormous pressure on the dark squares. None of the issues have really gone away. Even these two issues are still terrible. So we see h takes g7, and now not even taking on g3, just queen d7, so emphasizing control of the light squares now. And okay, what is black actually threatening? Well, knight takes and bishop takes remain major threats, as well as queen h3 at some point. So here we see king g2, which is not very pleasant after knight g4. Now black is threatening knight e3 check. So Fischer's last move is knight d2, just inviting knight e3 check. There's not really anything he can do in this position. It's absolutely miserable, to say the least. So that queen d7 not only had threatened queen h3 and stuff, it also supports now knight g4 for that knight to come to e3. So knight d2, knight e3 check, and now Fischer resigned. So the interesting thing about this tournament is how Fischer really persisted with this two knights variation against the Caro-Kann defence. I think it's, to me, it seems more widely known that Fischer's weaknesses as far as openings was against the French defence. He had some trouble against the French defence in his early career. But later we saw in the 1970 USSR versus rest of the world match, he played Petrosian, and Petrosian dared play the Caro-Kann, and Fischer just chose the exchange variation. So he did eventually vary away from this variation, which brought him such a miserable score with white. So the Russians had really taken the opportunity to exploit a kind of passive opening system from Fischer. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.